afternoon and welcome to Beyond Instinct with me, guest podcasting host Tim Britt, sitting in for Michael Russell today because Mike's on the receiving end of the questions. Normally he's the one that's asking the questions, but today we've swapped roles. And interested to know straight off the bat, Mike, why is it that I'm sitting in this chair and you're not doing the questioning today?
Perfect. Thanks, Tim. So what we're doing today is, obviously the podcast is called Beyond Instinct. And we've been going now for, depending on which one this comes out on, but 7 or 8 episodes. And we've sort of crafted where we want to go and what we're doing. And I think we're doing a good job. And we're going to stick true to the name of Beyond Instinct now. So it's more than just a quirky name. There is meaning behind it. And we're going to start opening up over the next 3 or 4 interviews how and when people went beyond their own instinct, what provoked it, what happened, did it work, did it not, and deep dive in on that. And I thought it's only fair that I go first, I guess.
That you're, first in the firing line.
Yeah, lead by example and all that.
Well, okay, so let me just throw this at you straight off the bat. So in terms of instinct, and I relate instinct, I would imagine, as most people do, to gut instinct, intuition, what your gut's telling you. And there's almost, I did a bit of research coming into this, you won't be surprised here, but there's almost twice as many neurons in the gut than there are in the brain. So if the gut's telling you to do something, why is it that you shouldn't just use those instincts to make decisions? What is it that you're looking for to move beyond just instinct?
That's not what we wrote down in the notes. Okay, so why would you use more than instinct? So what I'll do, I think what I'll do is I'll go through how that shows up for me and why and how I did it. That would probably answer the question. So when I first went into motion, I was a technician. So I was a vehicle technician, that's what I was. And my gut instinct was to be a hyperachiever. I liked winning, didn't mind losing, but I always played to win. And in that world, the faster you are, the better you are. So my gut was always telling me, improve efficiency, improve efficiency, improve efficiency. When I came into motion, which was CSA, I did exactly that. I improved efficiency straight away. That's just what I did, whether it was through systems, processes, people, the way we did it, products, didn't matter what it was, but all I ever did is look at efficiency. And where I related efficiency, time in motion, I turned it into money. So therefore, my gut instinct was that. If we're not earning more money, my gut instinct was, how can we do what we're doing quicker? So then we get more money in or more work in. If we are reaching 10 clients a day, how can we reach 20 clients more a day? So everything was efficiency based. So that was my gut instinct, and it worked. It did work. Why did I trust it? Because it's always worked for me in the past. It's always led me down the right path. I did nearly 10 years as a mechanic, Volkswagen, Audi, Bentley, and the faster I worked, the higher I got in the rates. So my gut was right. And there's always that confirmation bias, but you like to prove yourself anyway.
Yes.
But it got to a point where it started to not work. Mm-hmm. Or not work, but plateau. So
what point was that? You're consistently growing up to a certain point and then you recognised it's
3 years in.
3 years out of 10?
3 years out of 10. Yeah.
Okay, so after 3 years, efficiency started to fail.
You could argue 2, because the first year was literally learning what a business is, how it runs, taxes, VATs, all that sort of stuff that I'm not used to. So you could argue 2, but on paper it was 3. Yeah. So 3 years in, efficiency's not failing, but I've squeezed as much as I can out of it. And efficiency is all about saving money, saving time, which then saves money or makes more money either or. And I had this novelty of, now I'm going to have to spend money to acquire things, or do things, or I'm going to have to spend time to acquire things. do things, and that was completely, here we go, against my instinct. It just wasn't in my, why would I spend 2 hours doing something that I can do in 15 minutes? And I had to kind of rewire myself for that.
So could you give me an example of that? You said, why would you spend 2 hours doing something that previously you could have done in 15? Could you give me an example of what that looks like?
I can give you a really crude example. So what that looks like is if I needed to, they put motion and supply machines. So if I needed to speak to a customer and they wanted a machine, my knowledge in that area was usually higher because I did it every single day. It's just part of their business. So what could take me 5 minutes of asking 8 questions to find out exactly what I need to know to produce or to provide the right machine, could take 4 hours because I can drive to site, I can go meet the customer, spend some time, have a coffee. And in my mind at the time, before I really understood sort of relationships and rapport building and that kind of thing, I saw it as a pure efficiency situation. So I can get them exactly what they want in 10 minutes, happy days, job done. I didn't understand the other side so much because I'd never been in that world. Never really done customer service from a back end of a mechanic's garage.
So you didn't necessarily understand the necessity of developing relationships with people.
I didn't see the benefit. I just saw it as a transactional, you want this, I'm the expert in that, here's what you need, buy it, thank you, job done, it will last you for years, everyone's happy.
So what was the outcome of this shift? How long did it take for you to shift the way that you were thinking, recognise you needed to do something different, and then what was the outcome of doing it differently?
Yeah, so the shift was quite quick because once I realised I'm quite heavy on looking at the analytics of the business as well at the time. So once I realised that we were where we were, I then, in my nature, I look at where we moved. And I ended up on basic things like YouTube, bits of like Tony Robbins stuff, all sorts of stuff. So the second I realised that this door was opening to a different world, and we use customer service rapport as a very basic example. There's loads of examples that we can go through of this. The switch didn't take long at all because if I learn something new, I activate it quite quickly and then decide if it works or if it doesn't, and then learn something else if it doesn't, double down on it if it does. So really within 6 months, and we had Russell, that one of my friends that worked with me at the time, if he was here today, he would tell you that it could have changed overnight almost of the way we do things to a certain degree.
And why didn't it change overnight?
Oh, it did.
Okay.
Well, actually it didn't. So I changed overnight. The whole company didn't change overnight. That takes time.
Well, that's interesting because you're somebody that would consistently say to me in conversation just how much you love change.
I do.
You love change. It's kind of your drug. You love being put in that position where you have to adapt because you know that you can. And you can arguably, you could say that you probably know that you can adapt quicker than anybody else around you. And that gives you a competitive advantage, let's say. But at the same time, understanding that you're unique and that other people don't adapt to change in quite the same way or at the same pace of change as you. Have you found how have you overcome that? Because obviously working with a team of people with lots of different characteristics, organisations with processes that need to change, where people have to adapt their philosophy, their approach towards how they do things and why they're doing things. How have you sort of learnt to manage that? Because it can't be easy.
It's not easy, actually, to be fair. So if we fast forward now to where motion is now, I use the word lag time. So again, that's not my natural instinct. So lag time is, we will have talked about a new initiative, new system, new process, whatever with the team. Where my instinct is, let's get it in, let's get it running, let's work out if it's working, if it is, double down, if it isn't, move away. I now have lag time, which I do find tough sometimes, but it is, we'll discuss it, we'll agree or disagree on it. If we agree on it, we'll move forward on it. And then we just monitor it and we measure how it's going into the company and what the impact of that initiative or scenario is, versus I would activate it the next day, if that makes sense.
So,
which I find so when you say I find frustrating, because I feel sometimes by the time I've implemented it, worked out if it's working, if it's not, I would have changed it before. The argument is at the moment where we are in a company is we wouldn't have even started testing it. I'd have already been on phase B, phase C and phase D at the time of where we're still testing. However, in sustainability of a business or culture, I've learned probably the last 3 years that adaptation is great, pivoting is great, being not reactive, but being able to act effectively under probably pressure, I guess the word is a really good skill. But like all skills, and probably is my instinct, I don't want to keep going back to that word, I'm just trying to link them back in. You have to decide when to use it and when not to use it.
So it's being able to recognize that there are times when you have to move beyond your instinct because your instinct, for whatever reason, is not enough. And at the same time, having to understand when you're dealing in an organization that grows and becomes bigger and has more personalities and characters to deal with, how you have to manage your expectations in relation to how other people can and want to work.
Yeah. In a leadership role. So I think if I stayed as a mechanic, I could have relied on my instinct and I would have been very successful at a great garage, or even maybe had my own garage. I don't know. If you're in a role which involves leadership, and that's either of people or clients or something around those lines, your instinct will be a big part of you, but you've also got to realize that you need to work on the other skills or muscles. It's like being naturally strong, but not having good stamina for a race. Well, that's great until something chases you. So you want to sort of build up the things you're not naturally good at. So then actually when you're in the situation, so one skill that I've really built up over time that isn't natural to me, and I'm still building it to this day, and I think if you ask my employees or my wife or anybody, they can see I'm really trying. It's about pausing and not acting straight away. So my instant reaction is let's go. As where now I'm like, let's think. And then I'll think, okay, is my natural skill set what this needs right now? If not, okay, what skill set is required right now? Okay, which one do I choose? And then I will choose that skill set and then use that skill set.
So it's interesting you say that you may have been able to remain using just your instinct if you were, for example, still a car mechanic, versus recognizing you have moved into a leadership role and that leadership brings with it a different requirement. So is moving beyond instinct, do you think, are you talking about the transition that people have to go through from being a technical expert, very good at what they do day to day, and we see this a lot in management, right? People are very good at what they do. They move into management roles, they don't have any formal training, and it becomes quite challenging for them because all of a sudden they're in a different world dealing with lots of different personalities, and they find that whole world quite daunting almost. So this beyond instinct, is it about the transition that people make through into leadership? And once you're in a leadership role, recognizing that you can't just rely on your instinct or your technical abilities, and therefore you have to start thinking about how to be more adaptive?
I think it's about growing your instinct. So I think you will forever keep moving beyond your own instinct, but then your instinct changes. So as I was talking then, like the skill set of learning to like pause, it sounds quite basic, but that's now my natural instinct. My natural instinct now is when something happens in the bigger business, the startups are different. They still they still work quite nicely with my original test, adapt, pivot instinct. That's a startup that's what's required. That skill is good. In the bigger businesses, my natural instinct is what's happened, what's our play. It's never act. And that's my natural instinct. I don't even have to think about it. There's some scenarios, some little bits that I need to think about and work on. As I said, it's a never-ending game of moving forward. But that is now my natural instinct in the bigger business. That's my first play. It's just naturally the first thing I do. So, for example, we had an email from somebody the other day. It read quite hard, and I was quite surprised and a bit triggered by it. And I just left the email there. Old instinct would have been, we need to jump on this and get it sorted straight away. New instinct was, okay, let's see what happens here. And then after about another half an hour, another email came in from the similar company with a slightly different turn, a bit better. And then by the afternoon, after the sort of trigger, the impact of the email had come down, made the phone call, had a conversation with who sent it. It was written, or it was read by us in a very different way that was written by them. Everything was solved, everything was lovely, and it was great. And that's my new instinct, but I didn't have to think that's what I need to do. That's where I think when you're moving beyond instinct, you need these little reminders, or I used to have on my laptop, just pause, to remind me that my old instinct of action, let's go fast, doesn't always work in a bigger environment. In
a leadership role.
In a leadership role. Part of being a leader, I think a lot of it is still stability. That, the place is burning down and people can look at you and you're going, yeah, okay, cool, I can see that door on fire. Nice and calm, and being able to make a decision, confidence, in a nice, calm manner. In a leadership role, that is something. If I was very reactive, fast pace, today we're doing this, tomorrow we're doing the other. Like I think I've said on a podcast before that when I was in that efficiency mode at the beginning, which really benefited the company. I'm not saying it was a bad move, it was a good move. But it only had 4 people in it. We went through 7 CRMs in 1 year. The last one was fantastic, but I was ever looking for further efficiency all the way down the line. And it was brilliant. And it did work at the end, but if I did that now with a larger team, that destroyed this company. Well, not destroy it maybe, but it would seriously damage it.
Yeah, and obviously I look at it in the terms that, or in the sense that people, if they buy into what it is a business is trying to achieve, or even buy into the person who runs the business and what their ambitions look like, they can pretty much find motivations to adapt and run with that person to a certain point. But when there's that amount of change that's happening so regularly, I can imagine for people operating in that space, it becomes quite draining because they're constantly having to buy into the next new thing and look at different ways of trying to fulfill their obligation to the business without necessarily having the clarity around what that looks like and what they actually, how they invest their energy in a sustainable way going forward. So what's your approach now, where you said that you'd been through 7 CRMs in the space of 12 months? How would you approach that today in your business?
Yeah, so firstly, just on the people question, some people would thrive in that environment, but it's not a scalable model. You can have 4 people that love change and adaptation as much as you. You can have that. And that sometimes in really small micro businesses is a very powerful team. If everyone's on the same wavelength and they're all working the same way, that's great. But as a company scale is to get 10, 15, 20, 50 people that all love change. I mean, can you imagine 50 people all changing every day? That'd be a nightmare. So in a small scale, it can work. But as it gets bigger, I don't know of any company that works like that on a larger scale.
So the beyond instinct is as much about, if you're looking to scale a business, it's important to recognize perhaps what your own personal instincts are, and be authentic towards yourself, recognizing that if you want to grow, your instincts have to change and adapt over time to give yourself that opportunity. But actually the business, for it to be scalable, needs to be built on more than just the instinct.
Yeah, if you want it to be larger. And I think that...
What if you don't want it to be larger?
I think you can have a team of 4 or 5 people that think the same.
And just stick with that. And
I think so.
So it's as much about the ambition of the leader as the individual as much as anything.
Yeah, I mean, there's an argument that, again, instinct could be embedded into the company. So we've always done it this way, so we'll always do it this way. That's instinct to a certain degree. So there's a danger that although, adapting is just one profile, it might be analysis, it might be, whatever your instinct is, it might be great for a while, but if nobody's challenging, and that's what beyond instinct is, really, challenge. So what's happened is if there's ever an issue, I then self-analyze either on myself, on the business, or whatever it is. Where did it go wrong, and can we change it? So I'm still kind of following my instinct a bit internally, but I'm using it in a different way. And then what that does is I'm open enough to believe that actually, do you know what? I don't know everything. I don't know all the answers, and I don't. I'm a million miles away from it. Being open to the input from others, and then going, okay, fine, that's not what I would do, maybe, but let's have a look at it. And then therefore you just learn a new path, you learn a new skill, you learn a new instinct.
Yeah, so if you're more of a fixed mindset,
that's where I think you would sit on your instinct, probably not change too much. And I think that's where people get in trouble. Either personally or business-wise. Because if you're in a fixed mindset of, I know what I'm doing, I can do this really well, you're not aware of anything coming from an external point of view. You're missing all of the signs, all of the triggers, all of the little things that can give you a clue that something's changing. If you're so fixed mindset, then it's still like now, I'm not going to go on about it, but AI. I can talk to some people about AI and they'll go, it's never going to happen. And I'm like, well, like, it is happening, number one. And two, there's a lot out there telling you that something's going to happen, at least, even if 1%, but some people say never. I'm like, wow.
Do you think that's just fear that's holding them back, though?
It might be fear. It might be lack of interest. So they don't know enough about it. I spoke to Marcus the other day, and he said until about 3 months ago, when I was openly talking about it, he was up in the office more, didn't really even know what it was. So if you're not in that space, you wouldn't know about it, I guess. So there's that. But
I suppose that's part of human nature to a certain extent. It reminds me of, I can't remember the name of the film, but it's with Leonardo DiCaprio, Looking Up, something like that. Yeah, Titanic, yeah. where it all comes crashing down. But no, the one where the asteroid is heading towards Earth, and it's scientifically proven, and they can see it and they can track it, and they know it's going to, and everybody just kind of ignores it and carries on as normal until the point where one day they can actually see the thing and they come to realise, okay, this is going to happen.
It's just blind panic.
And you kind of go through the process, I suppose, don't you? There is a bit of panic, but then there's, you're just resigned to the fact that, yeah, fine, this is going to happen. So you make the most of your time. But going back to sort of human nature and accepting that things are going to change and putting yourself in a position where you're comfortable with that, and you can get everybody else around you to recognise why change is necessary, and then put it into an individual perspective. So this is why it's necessary, and this is what it's going to look like to you. Is that a way in which you think businesses can scale, can move beyond instinct and scale? I'm interested in your thoughts. Well, I'm interested in your thoughts. You mentioned that it's not scalable to have people, it's a small team where they're just constantly adapting and evolving and changing.
With that skill set, no. But I think too much of any skill set is hard to grow a team, because you don't want a team as its nature is diversity. You've got everybody that's got the same skill set. So instinct or skill set or whatever you want to call it, it's if you've got so much of it, then it's just, I don't know, I don't think you can. It's just my personal opinion. It's nothing science behind it, but I just think that diversity of the team is what makes it strong. But I was talking to somebody the other day and he said you should never have too many analytical people in the room. You should never have too many creative people in the room. If you've got loads of creative people in the room, nothing tends to get done. If you've got too many analytical people in the room, there's absolutely no creativity. It's probably where I was, efficiency based. So you need a balance. And if you've got a balance of creative and efficiency, the creative are there for innovation and ideas and everything along those lines, and the analyticals are how to get it done. If you had a whole room of analytical people, they'll always just be analysing stuff. I remember once, I can't remember if it was my dad or my granddad, but when I first started at Motion at CSA, which it was then, they said to me, because I used to run spreadsheets and everything, so I was quite a critical analytical person at the time. They said that you're just going to run spreadsheets forever, and it's great that you can see all these gaps in efficiency and holes, but actually, do you know what? It's about going out and getting a customer versus trying to plug a 5-minute hole a day. It's more beneficial about going out into the world and actually getting a client. And I think that that's the same as if you had everybody with their own instinct. To a certain degree, it can, but to a large scale, I think you need that diversity, difference of people and opinions in a group for challenge. To then challenge allows growth.
That's interesting. Yeah, challenge allows growth, because you said that beyond instinct is as much about challenge as it is anything else, leadership or however else you want to look at it. So how can you put yourself in a situation where, or learn as an individual to be comfortable being challenged?
You need, you just need to believe that. Well, how do I answer that question? So I know it, but how do I explain it? So if it was me to be challenged, I'm challenged on everything. So anyone that says anything to me ever, I always think it. I think about it. Okay, what was behind that? What was the meaning? What was the reason? What was the good or bad? But that's just who I am. So I'm getting challenged. I'm kind of using other people to challenge me, even if they're not directly challenging me, if that makes sense. But I've also had coaches, I've also had mentors and things like that, some good, some bad. But to be in an environment for challenge is trust, really. It's just trust that somebody's challenging it for the greater good versus a dig or a attack or whatever it might be. And I think you have to be open to see that. And that's where that phrase, what was my part to play, which I used to use a lot. So if we ever had an issue, a problem, a complaint, it didn't matter what it was, I'd always go, what was my part to play in that scenario? And how could that have been prevented? Might not have been able to be. But again, that's sort of challenging myself quite a lot.
Yeah, okay.
And I think as you move to a leader, you just need to grow your instinct. You need to go beyond your instincts. You've got a jump of technician to business owner. You have to go beyond your instinct for that. You then have to go from, if you do, business owner to sort of CEO level, leadership team level, whatever you want. And you've got to go beyond your instinct to that. And then I guess I haven't got to this, but if you go from that to like investor, that will be again beyond your instinct again. I still always listen to my gut. I don't ignore it at all, because I think that it's led me right a lot of the times. But I think instinct is probably more about, it's your comfy zone as well. It's your skill set. It's what you're comfy and good at. So if I always valued myself on, I don't know, say I was great at swimming, I was always really fast, and I just kept swimming all the time, then I'm always going to be the best. But, I'll be rubbish at climbing a tree. As long as I stay swimming, I'm okay. And I think that the challenge of actually, let's climb the tree in case I need to climb the tree. I think that's that's really beneficial, because then you've got a wider skill set. And I think that's needed in leadership when you're running teams, bigger teams.
Yeah, so you can still use that sense of adaptability, just use it in a different way.
That's how I do it, I think. I think mine is, so you said earlier, how does it show up? How does the team, when they've got somebody at the head of the company that loves change and adaptation? I think the difference is I filter it through different things. And I only release it to the team when I've thought about it a lot.
Okay.
As with before, I could think of an idea and come and voice it straight away. I don't.
It's kind of holding yourself, waiting for something to confirm that it's the right direction, or waiting for the right moment to have the conversation with the person. So it's having restraint. It's
structure as well. So like, we have proper structured meetings now. So if I'm thinking of a new idea, and I've noticed the reason of why that's come up, and there's an opportunity here for whatever company, I wait for the meeting that we've got scheduled that's relevant for that. And that normally gives time. But that isn't something I used to do. And that's, I guess we can argue this is growth, this is learning, but I think it's instinct. I think that people rely on their instinct a lot. And their instinct will prove them right. But if you want to grow as a person, or as a company, or into a leader, or something along those lines, you don't need to. But I think a good thing is to move past your instinct.
Okay.
It's kind of evolution as well.
Well, so I was going to ask you, that a question that sprung to mind is, if there's one piece of advice that you can offer someone who's listening to this that can help them move beyond their instinct, what would it be?
I think there's got to be a reason why they want to do that, why they want to move beyond their instinct. I think, because I don't think somebody would do it just for the sake of it. So I think know why you're doing it. It sounds a bit strange, but I'd say know why you're doing it. So for me, we said it at the beginning, my achiever's mindset of wanting to be the best, right? So I'm now in a leadership role. I want to be the best leader. So I'm moving beyond what my instinct is doing, telling me to do, to become the best leader. The reason I want to be the best leader is so that the team get the best leader. So then the customers get the best team, etc., etc. So that's for me. I think the other thing is, personally, it's how you move forward. I think. So your instinct will serve you well, and you can rely on it, and you can craft it, and you can get better at it. I think you're in a linear lane of where you're going with that. That's where if you're going beyond it, or growing it, which I don't know if that's even a thing, growing your instinct, but I think that's what it is. You're getting a wider range of where you can use that skill set, what skill sets you have. And then all of a sudden, like I said, before, the instinct is how do we go faster, how are we more efficient, those things. As we're now, my skill set is in a larger scenario, what's my play? And then I choose what option I'm going to. It might be how do we become more efficient, which would then obviously make me very happy, because I find it very easy, and that's my instinct, or my main instinct, I should say. It might be it's not.
And that's the point of moving beyond the instincts. Give yourself opportunities of doing things differently, assessing what's required, and then being more comfortable.
It's being open to the fact you can. Yes, there's different learning capabilities and things along those lines, but realistically, I believe if somebody wants to grow themselves, grow their instinct, change their instinct, I think they can, if they really want to. But there has to be quite a strong why behind it. It doesn't always have to be the best leader or whatever, but I think that a why is a compelling reason to change something.
So for somebody listening to this thinking that, well, that sounds great, I'm interested in understanding my why, my own personal reasons for moving beyond instinct, how can they go about doing that? That's not just about self-reflection.
Really good guidance on it is Simon Sinek's Start With Why. It's a really good book about that guidance. I probably didn't know my why before I started moving beyond my instinct or whatever. I think that I know my why more now because I've decided to reflect more, and then that's given me that.
So what's your why?
Depends where I am. But I think
come on.
I think, to be honest with you, I think my why is the same for everything, whether I'm a dad, a husband, a leader, or whatever it is. Sales, it's just to be the best version of whatever that role is. So like, even if for my kids, right? So there's instinct, which is, what is instinct? Gut feeling, probably a bit of learned behavior, probably a bit of genes. It could be all sorts of mix of that, of how to bring, say, my kids up, for example. And I think if I followed my instinct, I'd be a good dad. I think I'd be fine. But again, with my kids, like, they do things as kids do, and I reflect, and I think, was there a better way to handle that? Good or bad? How did I show up? All of this stuff, I'm just analysing on myself all the time. And then I adapt, and then my instinct changes, and then my go-to changes. So a great example is my first child, when they were terrible twos. It wasn't too much of a terrible two, but it was a bit tricky sometimes. I remember once he was being an absolute nightmare, and I don't shout ever shout. I just thought, I don't know how to get past this. So at quite a strong tone, I said no. But in my head, I made a conscious decision of, I'm not sure what to do here. I'm gonna default to, no, like really firm. Didn't even bother at all. And then I thought, wrong idea. But and then, that could have been my default in the past. I wasn't that, but I was conscious before I had the kids to not be that scenario. Now my default is we change, like for a 2-year-old, we change the environment. So if they're getting a bit funny about something, we distract them with something else, and guess what? They're out of their own mood and happy days at work. So therefore my new instinct is to do that. So it's just, so I don't know if that really answers the question.
I think it doesn't. It doesn't. I think you can answer it however feels right to you, because that's the point, I suppose, of instinct. It's moving beyond your own personal instincts, and so it's a case of understanding yourself in enough detail that you can recognise what your instincts are for starters, and then be able to, just adapt and be flexible in relation to what it is that you want to be. Goes back to your why.
Yeah, if you want to. Like, you don't have to go beyond your instinct at all. Like, for me, it's, I like to achieve. I want to be the best version of myself. I want to be really proud of myself. I want to be proud of everything that I'm involved with. I want to be surrounded by great people. All of these things. You don't have to, and there's nothing wrong with that. I've known some really happy people that have done a very, done the same job. They're extremely skilled at it, and they get so much satisfaction out of it. But that's their instinct, and they love it. There's no need for them to adapt. The industry's pretty safe. They know what they're doing. They can advance. They can double down. Because I think what I'm saying as well is, if you're going like beyond your instinct and you're widening your skill set or mindset or growth or whatever it is, what you're doing is becoming a good generalist. As where if you don't do that, what you do is you get very hyper-focused specialists. But a hyper-focused specialist, in my opinion, I don't think is a brilliant way to lead. Because they'll resonate with 10%, with 90% they'll struggle with. And as I said earlier, getting a hyper-focused team of 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, whatever people, that's great. Getting a hyper-focused team of 100 that are all going to live and breathe the exact same way as that specialist is quite hard, I would think.
Quite unlikely.
And then you're not getting the same amount of challenge. You're getting confirmations all the time. I think that's that's a good idea. Well, there's a surprise. We all think the same. That makes sense. And then what happens is you just completely blindly miss all of these threats and all of these opportunities. You miss everything because you're so on your own track. But as a specialism, I'd probably say that it's not a bad idea to not worry about this. Not turn off now. Don't worry about it.
Well, it's a bit late now. I mean, I turned off 35 minutes ago.
It's true, right? You know, somebody that is hyper-focused on a specialist subject, we need those people in the world. So don't go beyond your instinct. Double down on your instinct. Go harder on your instinct.
It goes back to what your motivation is, right? Your reasons behind wanting to do it.
But I think as a leader of a team or somebody that ever wants to outgrow themselves all the time, I think it's a key leadership skill.
Okay. Well, so what's next before we wrap up? What's on the agenda for Beyond Instinct? What's coming up next?
So there's still going to be some of the conversational podcasts coming in. We're going to do a bit of a hybrid for a couple of months. And then if we get a good amount of traction on this Beyond Instinct idea, then we will be swapping to this and we'll be interviewing all different types of people. So from employee levels to business leaders to, I'd like to get some sports people into all sorts of different things. And to understand from them, at what point did they go beyond their instinct? And how did it show up? Did it work or did it not work? I'm assuming I've only got one side. I'm assuming there's people out there that have pushed themselves beyond and then retracted back for some reason. Or it hasn't worked, it's made it worse. I'm assuming there's all this out there that I just don't know.
Yeah, and people who just got stuck, presumably, and couldn't figure it out for themselves.
Didn't have the support. So that's another thing, going beyond, you need support. You do normally need support because you're in a scenario where you're not the expert all of a sudden. So having an expert around
takes the pressure off. Yeah, and take the pressure off, can't it? Definitely. Okay.
So that's what we're going to be doing.
Okay. Well, it sounds really interesting. I've enjoyed today. I don't know how you found it. It's been different for me, obviously sitting on this side of the table, but have you enjoyed being interviewed? Have I done a decent job?
Yeah, I think so. I think
out of 10.
I'm now using my
Don't answer that.
I'd say that, yeah. I think I'm a hard person to interview anyway because you'll ask me a question and I'll tell you a story that doesn't lead to the question. It's who I am, unfortunately.
You learn to live with that, though, right? Okay, well, listen, thank you, Mike Russell.
Thanks for standing in.
No, you're more than welcome. I've enjoyed it and look forward to what comes next for Beyond Instinct.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll roll reversal at some point.
Got you, Britt.
Thank you very much.